problem of access, which is very, very crucial. And when we talk about the problem of access, this has to do with the fact that, yes, education is there, but how many of these learners or children could access good and functioning education? How many of them? It's a very serious study. Again, there was another study in 1997 in which schools were assessed, talking about achievements. Every year, WAEC do release results and NECO, and they will say that in each state, this is the result. If you compare those results, and we have a comparative analysis with the results in the past, we discovered that many of our students, or many of the candidates that wrote SSC and NECO exam did not do well. It's not a question of people coming having 6 or 7, 8 credits, but the question is at what level? Talking about A1 and so on. Because in many of these of our universities, it's not that you finish from the university, from secondary school, you now have 6 credits or 5 credits, and you want to have gain access to university. But university will also talk about that we have to recompute, and that is why most universities these days in Nigeria have what we call post-UTME. Well, it still boils down to the quality of education that we feel that these learners were exposed to while they were in secondary school. So the problem of funding is there. And having said this, education is on the concurrent list in the country. Both the federal and the state government, even local governments, could legislate on education. And in the past, the federal government used to have the total say when it comes to tertiary education. But even at that, let me quickly say that at the regional level in the First Republic, may I say also in the Second Republic, most of the universities funded by regional governments were appropriated by the federal government. And it was only of recent that we have state governments establishing state universities. So now state governments and federal government are now competing, so to say, talking about tertiary education. But basically at the secondary school level, I would say that the state governments have more to do here. Even the federal government talking about the unity schools, we know what happened, was it about 2-3 weeks ago, when the federal government said that it's closing down unity schools in the Northeast, arising from what? Insurgency. And this also a concern. Now, the problem of education, according to the National Policy on Education, talking about the ITs from the beginning, talking about the basic education, which is the cover 9 years of formal education, which is supposed to be compulsory, schooling, of 6-year primary education, and 3-year junior secondary education. From this level, we expect the learners to move to the senior secondary education. But it is so designed that if a learner is unable to progress, talking about the academic, then he should now go to technical education. But how many secondary schools have functioning workshops through which if a learner is unable to access academic content of the education at the senior secondary school level, he or she will not go into the technical aspect. From there can go to polytechnics or a college of education to learn vocational studies. So about 1/3 of our children who begin basic education currently proceed to senior secondary school. What happened to the 2/3? The problem of access. Again, talking about the post-basic education, which include 3 years of senior secondary education, then down to the technical stream. Again, we also have problem at this level with the standard that is falling. Many of them may also not be able to access good education. And the problem of access then means that a good number of our children are unable to access education. Even with the Millennium Development Goals, which talks about that by 2015, all children should be able to access education. We discovered that by 2015, many of our learners, children, will still not access education. Enrollment. Again, talking about the enrollment, I have data here that shows that many learners were not able to enroll, either at the state level, even at the federal level, in education. And this has problem. One source put it that 54,404 public primary schools that we have, that many of these learners were unable. In other words, we're talking about 10.5 million children were still not able to access education. So it calls for concern. Again, talking about the equity, we have to talk about the girl child. That how many of our girl child, I'm talking about the girl child, how many of them access education like their male counterparts? Of course, we go to the statistics, we discover that in the north, it's so worrisome. Why it's a bit better in the southwest, then again in the south-south and southeast, of course, we have more girls in school than male children. Again, talking about the vocational and technical education at junior secondary school level, we discovered that at this level, we don't have basic educations, talking about vocational schools and technical education. That every child just wants to come to school, and from there go to secondary school, and from there go to university to learn, to do probably law, medicine, or engineering. But how many of them want to talk about learning about vocational training and go ahead with education? And one thing I want to talk about, because of the time given to me, I actually want to talk about the curriculum. Now, if the curriculum is not effective, learning cannot take place. In fact, curriculum has to do with that it's meeting the future aspiration of the learner. As long as this is not meeting aspiration of the learner, of course, learning becomes uninteresting. And the reason why is that as much as possible, we talk about that these days, we now have a virtual classroom. That learners have to learn, talking about what we call technology. Let me quickly say this and probably comment what the Osun State government is doing through employment. If this is effectively utilized, would mean that long before these children leave secondary school, they have been exposed to virtual classroom because the contents are in the tablets given to them, and they can learn better. And again, we're talking about that as much as possible in the 21st century, pedagogy should be injected in such a way that we make use of the pedagogy to be able to train our learners. And curriculum now becomes relevant if it's meeting future aspirations of the learner. Now, let me quickly talk about international mobility when it comes to education. Now, we discover through the field, through this table, that the top 5 overseas study destinations for Nigerian children, we have UK, USA, Malaysia, Ghana, neighboring African countries, we have most of our students there. Then we have Canada. We now have the figure that in the year 2010, we have 38,851 Nigerians studying abroad. It calls for concern. It means that if we get it right, then these ones will not go outside to study. Again, many of them do go outside to study, maybe to show class. So it also calls for concern. And again, we cannot be talking about access to education and quality without talking about quality assurance. All we're talking about is that we need to get it right. And for us to talk about quality assurance, learner achievement as standards, we have to be weighed. And again, we talk about the welfare of the learner as well. We talk about how are they participating. We talk about career guidance, that will talk about the affective domain of the child. Not just talking about what he learns, but about his feelings. If a child is not properly taking care about his